G'day guys, I'm DMAC from NBA Fantasy Bible and along with me is Kayla Fonte and together we are Between Two Hoops. Kayla, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, really good. And as per normal, what a big week it's been in the NBA. Of course, we had the in-season tournament. What did you think?
I thought it was a pretty interesting week. It actually went smoother than I thought, which is good. But it was also weird having every team play just 2 games and then having certain games not count towards fantasy. But overall, pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I didn't mind it from a fantasy perspective. I know a lot of people had issues with it, and it
Mhm.
can be a bit of a struggle. And it seems like there's been plenty of days in between games as well, which there have been. But yeah, looking forward to getting back into it tomorrow. So, shall we get into our Week 7 review and Week 8 preview?
Let's do it.
Let's go. Okay, guys. Week 7 review. So, as per normal, we look at our hot performers, but also those sell high guys. So, not necessarily the top performers for the week, but those that we think are capable of being able to be sold high and potentially get a pretty good deal in a trade. So, starting with Rudy Gobert. Now, he's the 4th ranked category league player over the last week, which is pretty remarkable for someone. I won't say at the twilight of their career, but someone definitely in the mature stages of their career. But he's looked fantastic, even alongside of Cat. He's looked awesome. But just in the last week, he's been able to provide just really good, solid points. But it's the rebounds, averaging 20 rebounds. Of course, it's just been across two games last week, but still 20 rebounds definitely helped the owners and their managers that had Rudy on their team towards a victory. Just amazing performance.
Yeah, overall, he's just been a double double machine. And like you mentioned with those rebounds, 40 over 2 games. And I think he collected close to 10 blocks too, which is just equally impressive.
Yeah, he's back to Jazz Rudy Gobert, where he's just that blocks machine, defensive player of the year contender once again. And actually, he hasn't hurt free throws as bad as he typically does. So I think that's really boosted and buoyed his value over the last week or so. Second on the list, Derek White. Now, he's actually had a fantastic, solid season. And when Boston did acquire some of those newer players, it looked like he may have lost some of the supposed gain in value that he did have over the off season. But he's had a really solid season. But so far, well, actually last week, he was the 6th ranked category league player, and he did that just on amazing shooting.
Yeah, and overall, he just really exploded and he provided value on both ends of the floor, which is amazing for fantasy managers. And his efficiency off the charts and even his versatility too.
Yeah, his shooting percentage is above 55% over the last week. And just the points output as well has been quite amazing. His steals, of course, and we know that his out of position blocks are quite tremendous as well. But just the steals, the points, the efficiency has been awesome to see. And perhaps he's not a sell high. Maybe he's just going to continue doing this because KP's back. Tatum could be a little bit better at the moment. So perhaps he's just taking up some of the slack that Tatum he has sort of dropped off a little bit. But Derek White's looked really impressive. So hopefully he can continue that moving forward. Now, Terry Rozier, this is definitely a sell high opportunity. So since LaMelo Ball's gone down, Terry Rozier's just been able to improve not just his rebounds and his assists, but just his general plays, led the team. Charlotte's looked quite good. But Terry Rozier has definitely had an uptick since LaMelo Ball's gone down with injury.
Yeah, exactly. Just as we expected with LaMelo out, he's really stepped up in his absence and he can give you a double double points and assists. And even on top of that, he can give you threes, rebounds, steals. So he has a pretty solid all around game.
Yeah, he's sort of going back to how he was a couple of seasons ago, where he was a top 50 player. So even across the season, he's 53rd, 55th on the season, which has been a great comeback season for him after struggling last season as well. So on a heater, I still think he is a sell high candidate right now. And LaMelo should return in the next couple of weeks. So time to take advantage of that. Another sell high opportunity is John Collins. So at the Jazz, there's been a little bit of up and down in terms of their big man and their front court rotation, but Walker Kessler coming off the bench has been quite surprising. Now he's out injured as well. But John Collins, his uptick in performance in terms of category performance has actually been in terms of his block block rate as well. So across the season, he's averaged only 1.0 blocks per game. In the last week, he's averaged over 2. So that's where a lot of his value lies at the moment.
Yeah, even too, he displayed great two-way prowess as well. And in addition, like you said, it's those blocks, but even his impact, rebounding, playmaking slightly, even those points too, has just been great. And it's refreshing to see him back to not exactly that fantasy glory, but starting to get there possibly.
Yeah, I don't think he ever returns to that first
Yeah.
round or second round guy from a few seasons ago when he was at Atlanta pre Clint Capella. But he has looked really good, and it is a sell high just because Utah haven't had Larry Markkinen. They've had a few other injuries. So I definitely think it's a sell high opportunity. Another one, Shaden Sharp. So there's been quite a few injuries go through the Trailblazers, but Shaden Sharp's looked sharp as per his name. He's looked really good. Good output in terms of his points. His efficiency's looked vastly improved as well over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and like you said, Portland's been shorthanded, so that's really been where his value's been coming from right now. And he's been putting up great numbers in the primary categories, and even from three too. He's been really excellent.
Yeah, it's been a nice comeback. A lot of people were dropping him, and for good reason. He was really trending away after a really hot start, but having Malcolm Brogdon out, DeAndre Ayton to a certain extent, Jeremy Grant being out with concussion protocols as well, that's really buoyed his value over the last week or so. So definitely a sell high opportunity because once all those guys are back, perhaps that's going to really dent his value moving forward. Now, Kobe White, he was on this list last week, and he's just continued. He's going from strength to strength. Zach LaVine's still on the sidelines. Chicago's looked vastly improved, and that's been without Zach LaVine. But Kobe White's been a key player in that.
I think overall, it's just been really impressive how he's been able to maintain this high level of play for weeks because in the past, his consistency has been a huge issue. But I think that he'll be able to continue this momentum probably until the end of the year, especially with Zach LaVine out.
Yeah, and as we mentioned last week, there's a little bit of uncertainty in terms of, I guess, their big three with
Mhm.
Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic as well. So I think he's more than a stash. He's looked so impressive over the last probably 3 to 4 weeks. He's looked very, very good, and particularly while LaVine's been out over the last week and a half. All right. In contrast, our disappointments, but also buy low opportunities. Zion Williamson, I'm generally not a person that rosters Zion in terms of category leagues, but he's been really disappointing. And maybe there was something about Vegas that didn't mix well with Zion, but decrease in points, decrease just across the board, to be honest, decrease in minutes as well. So he's been really disappointing after looking quite good a fortnight ago.
Yeah, Zion is always someone I say I'm never going to draft, and then I end up taking him every year in points leagues. But you're right. He's just been not the best. He'll give you some solid games in points leagues, but it's just that consistency that's lacking and underwhelming numbers. It's just rough.
Yeah, absolutely. One positive, I guess, is that he has remained quite healthy. He
Hmm.
doesn't look healthy on the court, but he hasn't really missed in terms of injury. Jimmy Butler, it has been overall quite a disappointing season for Jimmy Butler so far, but very disappointing in last week. Now his points are down. His efficiency is one that's really suffered, not just last week, but across the season as well. So he is taking more 3-pointers, which is good, but it has impacted his fantasy game.
But it's also been really surprising too because Hero's been out for a long time, and now you have Bam out for the past week and probably this week too. And he hasn't really carried the team as we've expected him to. And
Yeah.
even his numbers just aren't consistent.
Yeah, a lot of other guys on that heat have really produced whilst Tyler Hero has been out. But yeah, you're right. Jimmy Butler, I would have thought that he
Mhm.
definitely would have carried this team, particularly in the absence of Bam as well. But yeah, I still think it's a buy low opportunity because we know where he can get to as we approach playoff season. I think he definitely will improve. D'Angelo Russell, so he was on our hot performer list last week, and he's just had a really disappointing week this week, actually. So just reduced minutes, reduced points, and his efficiency's taken a little bit of a hit.
Yeah, this was really disappointing to see, especially after, like we mentioned, that really hot performance from week 7. but I think it's just a slight slump that he's going through. Like the in-season tournament affected a lot of players, and this is probably just one of those instances. And I think he'll be able to bounce back next week.
Yeah, I think you're right. Definitely a buy low opportunity. The Lakers, just looking at some of the box scores as well, they did have a tight 8-man rotation before the in-season tournament, and I guess there was one or two blowouts as well on their way to the trophy. But yeah, they've extended their bench, had more guys come into the rotation. I guess Jared Vanderbilt has come back. Doesn't directly impact D'Angelo Russell, but I guess that's just more minutes to sort of have in the rotation as well. I still think D'Angelo Russell is going to be a top 100 player moving forward. So definitely a buy low opportunity. Yusuf Nurkic, really disappointing week. And that's mainly on the back of just very disappointing shooting numbers.
Yeah, overall, just very like underwhelming and surprising numbers over the past few games. He just hasn't really been efficient, and he hasn't even providing those blocks either, which we expect him to.
Yeah, so in terms of his blocks, he's averaged 1.2 blocks per game on the season. Just in the last week, has seen 0.3. And again, just 2 game sample, but just a really disappointing week for those that had him and really didn't contribute and actually did hurt you, particularly with the free throw percentages. Jakob Poeltl, one of your boys, he's been okay this season. I would have expected a little bit more out of him, but he had a very disappointing week last week. And his already low usage was tremendously low. I think on the season, he's got a usage rate of around 14%, but last week was 5%. So real downturn in terms of his points. Even his rebound numbers were a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, he wasn't able to reach double digits in points or rebounds in both games this week, which is not what you expect from Podol, even with his off season. It's just very surprising and just overall a really poor performance.
Yeah, and some of that could be attributed to just a bit of an uptick in terms of Pascal Siakam's performance. So Pascal Siakam has definitely had a bit of a comeback over the last couple of weeks, and maybe that's contributing to Jakob Poeltl's poor output recently. Cam Thomas, I'm pretty sure I had a couple of disagreements on Twitter a few weeks ago in terms of his overall value in terms of fantasy. I think a lot of people still had high hopes of him being a top 50 guy, and I just wasn't convinced. There were quite a few guys missing from the Brooklyn lineup, and he did take full advantage at the start of the season. Obviously missed some time with injury, came back, still got a lot of usage. So he's over 30% usage rate, which is awesome. So this is why I still think it is a bit of a buy low opportunity, but his shooting percentages were awful. He just can't hit his shot at the moment.
Yeah, and even then too, a lot of people have raised concerns about his all-around game, and I think that's why he has a little bit more value in points leagues over categories because his main aspect is scoring. He did have a couple of games where he can give you stats in multiple categories, but we didn't really see that as much this week.
Yeah, I completely agree. Very one-dimensional scorer,
Mhm.
which is fine, and that definitely buoyed his value at the start of the season. But when he's getting double teamed, which is bit of a compliment to his game, and he's still a young guy, but it definitely does impact his fantasy game. Uh, what can I say? He's just pretty much on this list almost every single week. Jordan Poole, just week after week, disappointing games. Um, Although this week he did have somewhat value in terms of his field goal percentage. He was shooting above 50%, but in contrast, his minutes were down and his peripheral stats were also down. So again, just another disappointing week.
Yeah, and I think people are really starting to just give up on Poole right now, and I don't really blame them. I know he was getting dropped a lot in my fantasy league, and then people were picking him up. They saw his bad performances and then just dropped him again. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not willing to drop him right now. And I don't even think he is a buy low at the moment. I just don't think maybe you could throw your worst player at him and see what you can do. Um, I don't want to drop him. I have him in only one league, which is surprising, seeing me that he was one of my breakout candidates this season. And he's just truly disappointed. But let's see what happens. Washington's a mess, but yeah, we'll see what happens moving forward. All right, just some quick ads. I've got, if you can see the graphic here, the first section here, I've got some injury replacements. So these guys are going to have short-term value, and we'll go through those guys shortly, but therefore, more your shorter term ads at this stage. And then in the second part, we'll go through some guys that will have longer term value. But to start with, some guys from Dallas, obviously Kyrie Irving. He did escape long-term injury. He was fallen upon during a game, during a play, but it did look really nasty at the time. And lucky for him, and also a bit of a relief for Dwight Powell, who did fall on him. It looked like all of his body weight went onto Kyrie's leg, but quite fortuitous, to be honest. So Kyrie is probably going to miss at least one game. He's definitely ruled out for tomorrow's game, but perhaps even a week's worth of games. So that does increase the fantasy value of guys like Derek Jones Jr., as pictured, Dante Exum, and Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yeah, I think, like you said, he's probably going to be out for about a week. Obviously, we won't know more until closer to then. But I think Exum is a really exciting ad here. He's a little bit of a risk, and it's going to be a bit of a gamble. But he really impressed when he moved into that starting unit, and I'm hoping that he can continue that momentum going forward.
Yeah, Dallas have a few other injuries as well. So you've got Maxi Kleber and, of course, Grant Williams. So Dante Exum came into the starting lineup for Grant Williams, and he did look quite good, even alongside of Kyrie. And now that Kyrie's also out, that just adds value to Dante Exum. And we know that Derek Jones Jr. performs a lot better when Kyrie Irving is sidelined as well. We've seen it previously, and he's actually having quite a solid season as well. He's looked good in Dallas, and he's adding quite a lot to that team as well. So my preference would be Derek Jones Jr. in terms of category leagues, but Dante Exum as well to provide those assists and a little bit of Australian bias. It's really good to see him back in the NBA and doing really well after being such a high draft pick, but some would say a bust as well when he did leave the league a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah, I think even Tim Hardaway Jr. too. Can't go wrong with him. He'll give you value in points, rebounds, threes, but not much outside of that.
Yeah, and typically he is already rostered, but yeah, just make sure that he is rostered because he will provide those numbers, the points, as you said, and the threes. Matisse Thybulle. Now we mentioned that Portland do have some injuries. It's looking like DeAndre Ayton will come back shortly. Malcolm Brogdon will come back shortly, but Matisse Thybulle will perform whilst Jeremy Grant is sidelined, and Jeremy Grant will miss at least one more game. I expect him to return for Thursday's game, so this could just be a one-game streamer. But I think Matisse Thybulle's looked really good. He's had 3 solid games, I think around 30 minutes. He's played 30 minutes per game in those 3. And of course, what he is going to provide you. It's the steals, it's the occasional block, and also he's hitting his threes as well, which is good to see.
Yeah, and as long as Portland is shorthanded, he should be able to provide some decent fantasy value, and he's really displayed that versatility over the past few games as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Another injury replacement. Now, Mitchell Robinson is out for tomorrow's game and potentially even longer. So Isaiah Hartenstein is the obvious pickup there. But we have seen Isaiah Hartenstein start last season for injured Mitchell Robinson, and he didn't set the world on fire. And of course, he was sharing the center minutes. But I still feel like that he's the better replacement big man as well. So I would go and pick up Isaiah Hartenstein if he isn't rostered already.
Yeah, and I think he's one of the more riskier streams as well, but I also have high hopes for him, and I'm hoping to pick him up myself. But he'll only contribute a handful of points, but his assists have been surprisingly solid over the past few games, and even he gives you value in rebounds and blocks too.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think he is the ad right now. Similarly, Nick Richards, it's really looking like Mark Williams will miss tomorrow's game and potentially even longer. So he has a back contusion at the moment. So it may just be a one-game absence. But Nick Richards is a really nice filler for Mark Williams. So you could do worse than picking up Nick Richards for at least one game.
Yeah, he flashed some potential in that starting role, and he can give you points, rebounds, and blocks.
Yeah, definitely. And similarly, whilst Bam Adebayo was out for the Heat, Orlando Robinson. In the last game, he was disappointing. He did have some early foul trouble. I was tracking that because my opponent at the time also had Orlando Robinson. But I think if he stays out of foul trouble, he's going to provide solid points, solid rebounds, and possibly even a couple of blocks as well.
And I'm just noticing a trend here. It's like every center in the NBA is injured right now.
Yeah, and they're not the oldest guys either. So Mark Williams is a young guy. Mitchell Robinson isn't overly old, and Bam Adebayo has typically been quite an Iron Man when it comes to playing most of the game. So yeah, a bit of a trend here. Not sure what that is, but yeah, interesting. Now, in the next category, these guys aren't necessarily injury replacements, but guys that I think have longer term value. But someone like Eric Gordon, as pictured here, he has thrived whilst Bradley Beal has been sidelined. Bradley Beal is now questionable for tomorrow's game, but also Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is also questionable. So it's looking like Beal will return and perhaps Durant actually misses. So I still think with Phoenix's decent schedule for the week, Eric Gordon is still a decent pickup.
Yeah, and I think so too. And as even when Beal returns, he's not going to play significant minutes right away. It's something that's going to ramp up over time. So even then, Gordon will still see solid usage too, and he should still be able to provide fantasy value.
Agreed. Agreed. Someone with longer term value is Malik Monk, and he's been on a tear recently, and not necessarily as an injury replacement. Of course, when someone like De'Aaron Fox misses, Malik Monk does step up. But even with the full complement of the team, Malik Monk's really been impressive.
Yeah, he's a pretty streaky player, but right now he's on a hot streak, so that's when you have to capitalize off of picking him up.
Yep. Roster him while he's hot, and he's continuing to be hot. In a similar boat, Malik Beasley. Now he's found a really nice role on this Bucks team. Of course, all the attention goes to Giannis and Dame, and that leaves Malik Beasley wide open for his 3-pointers. And he's actually providing more than just his 3-pointers as well. So he's more than a streamer at this stage, and I think he's a must roster player.
Yeah, a bit of a surprising breakout too, but he's still carrying over that momentum from November, which is really impressive. And like you said, he can also give you points, threes, rebounds, steals. He contributes to a variety of categories.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about this guy last week as a sneaky ad. Now, it's continued over the last couple of games as well. So Killian Hayes is putting up some decent numbers, good minutes as well. As we spoke about last week, though, that Detroit rotation could change at the drop of a hat. So watch this space, but I still think he can be worth rostering at this stage.
Yeah, I think so too. And he can still give you value in those primary categories. But like we mentioned before, it's just a situation that you just kind of have to monitor from game to game.
Yeah, definitely. His Pistons teammate, Bojan Bogdanovic, a really popular ad when he came back from injury, but I still think he's under-rostered at this stage. He's really important to what they're trying to achieve, which, they're at a low level at this stage. But in terms of supporting Cade, I think he's really important.
Yeah, and I think he's just going to carry over that momentum too. And he's in the starting lineup, and he's going to post similar stats to what he had last year. So I think he's definitely worth a roster spot.
Yeah, agreed. Trey Jones. Now, this is an interesting one because it wasn't that long ago that we said that he was a definite drop, and I think he was at the time. But it's now looking like Wemby, based on the last game, Wemby started at the 5 as opposed to power forward, which meant Zach Collins came off the bench, which conversely also meant that Jeremy Sohan would play more forward, opening up more point guard minutes for Trey Jones. So I think he could be a sneaky ad at this stage. And even if he's playing the mid to late 20s in terms of minutes, I think he's definitely worth a roster spot.
Yeah, I think the whole situation with the starting point guard is a bit messy right now, but hopefully he could return to that point guard role more permanently. But even then, he's been showcasing his scoring and playmaking skills, which should improve as long as he's in that role.
Definitely. Trey Murphy, now he came back from injury, slowish start, but he's definitely worthy of a roster spot in terms of category leagues, less so in points leagues. You're the points league expert, Kayla. What's your take?
Yeah, he's a little bit iffy in points leagues. I was actually looking at his stats the other day, and it's decent value, but I'm sure it's going to increase once someone on the Pelicans gets injured, which is probably going to happen pretty soon because that seems to be a trend.
Yeah, definitely. Zion and Ingram tend to be injured every single year. So, make sure that Trey Murphy's rostered at this stage. Patrick Williams, now he's trending up quickly. Of course, we spoke about Kobe White, so he should already be rostered. Of course, if he's not already rostered, make sure he's rostered. But Patrick Williams is another beneficiary. A lot more play going through him. He's providing some defensive stats. He's providing some good rebounds as well. He's just looking a lot more impressive than he was earlier in the season.
Yeah, he definitely had a rough start to the season, but it's refreshing to see this now. And it's, I think, a trend that we'll continue to see for the rest of the year, as we mentioned with Zach LaVine out. And it's good that he contributes to several categories too. So it really opens up his value there.
Yeah, I know a lot of other fantasy analysts are quite high on him, and they have been for many years. And I haven't seen it up until this point. He has shown flashes at this stage, but he's looking quite solid. So I think he's definitely worthy of a roster spot. And finally, Caleb Martin, he's looked really good in the last 3 to 4 games. Having said that, just bear in mind that Tyler Hero will be due back, not necessarily impacting him directly, but it's just more pieces to that puzzle or more mouths to feed. So keep that one in mind. But Caleb Martin is running hot at the moment, so definitely worth at least streaming.
Yeah, he's had some really impressive games as of late, and he can give you that value in the primary categories, and on top of that, threes too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, your favorite, the drops. I've got there Reggie Jackson. Jamal Murray's back from injury, so Reggie Jackson can be dropped straight away. I don't think you really need to think too hard about that. They won't play much alongside of each other, so that definitely dents his value in terms of standard league fantasy value.
Yeah, as long as
Karis
he's on the
LeVert,
bench, not worth an ad.
not worth an ad. Deep leagues, keep an eye on that. Definitely worth it in the deepest of leagues, but definitely not for standard leagues. Karis LeVert, he's out injured, but he was trending towards a drop anyway with everyone healthy. Darius Garland's back. Donovan Mitchell's looking sprite. So definitely Karis LeVert for me is a drop.
Yeah, and I think he will return to fantasy relevance, just not right now. He's also dealing with that knee injury, but once Cleveland's backcourt starts to miss some time, then he'll become relevant again.
Yeah, agreed. Andrew Wiggins, we've been saying this for weeks, but he's just not worth hanging on to. So drop him in standard leagues. We don't need to go any further than that. Same goes for Gary Trent Jr. He's rostered in far too many leagues for my liking,
Hmm.
but unless some of the bigger guys for the Raptors go down, he's definitely worth keeping on the waiver wire. Same goes for Dylan Brooks. Now he started off really well. Just recently, he's just returned to the old Dylan Brooks. He's just not doing enough to be able to be rostered in standard leagues.
Yeah, even in points leagues too, he's decent, but he doesn't provide enough value to warrant a roster spot, and even then, his consistency is all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. In a similar boat, Lou Dort, same sort of situation to Dylan Brooks. Started off really well. He was a must roster player to start the season, but he's definitely trending in the wrong direction.
Yep, agreed.
Bobby Porter. So he's been solid over the last few years, and he'd give you some nice points, some threes, good rebounds, and he did it efficiently. But he's just not been able to provide that this season.
And he's pretty rostered too. Like I think it was about 66% in point in Yahoo leagues, which is a little bit surprising considering his double doubles are super inconsistent, and that's all he really provides.
Yeah, so unless you're in a league, in a category league that does do double doubles, or perhaps even offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds and personal fouls, I don't think he's worth rostering at all. RJ Barrett, again, someone who started off the season really, really well, but typical RJ Barrett is good in points leagues, but in category leagues, just not worth it for me. But you may have a different take there.
Yeah, I actually do have Barrett in one of my points leagues, and I'm not ready to drop him yet. He actually has been pretty solid. He's been getting me about 25 to 30 fantasy points a game. Definitely a monitor situation.
Yeah, definitely. Russell Westbrook, I think this is probably consistent across points leagues and category leagues, but he's a drop for me. He's just not playing enough. Harden's definitely taken a lot of that value away from Russell Westbrook.
I think that in really deep leagues, he could be a hold, but in the majority of other ones, he's a pretty safe drop. And we've talked about this before with that inconsistency.
Yeah. If there is an injury to one of their guys, he's probably going to step up, but we can't bank on that, even though there is a history with Kawhi and PG-13 as well with the injuries. But at this stage, he can't be rostered. Benedict Mathurin, he had flashes during the in-season tournament, just not enough to make him a must-roster player.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. It's that cycle of just bad games, one or two good games, and then right back to where he was before.
Yeah, and again, he's very one-dimensional. He's coming off the bench. Buddy Hield's regained that starting position, did that probably about 3 weeks ago. So Benedict Mathurin, definitely not worth rostering in standard size leagues. Scoot, now, I haven't been a believer, but I also like to preach patience. But at this stage of the season, if you are lacking, if you're struggling, and you just definitely need those wins, it may be time to part ways with Scoot.
It's funny too because the other day I was looking on the fantasy subreddit and there was one thread all about Scoot and everyone was just shitting on him basically. And they were really just talking about how he's been costing matchups every week. And I think he's just a more long-term player. If he yeah, like it's tricky.
Yeah, just be ready that when he starts shining, and he will, he's got that pedigree. When he starts shining, come towards the end of the season, Portland will probably want to start tanking as well. When I say tanking, they'll start resting guys like Jeremy Grant and probably even DeAndre Ayton down the stretch. So just watch for Scoot come the end of the season as well. I feel like there's a little bit more to the season for Scoot, but at this stage, I think he's a drop. Now, this is one of your drops, and you've been on this for quite some time, but Marcus Smart still out injured. Ja Morant due back in about 8 days, I believe, from now, 19th of December,
Yeah.
which is my birthday, by the way, so I should
Oh,
remember that.
awesome.
Yeah, 25. Yeah, so Marcus Smart, drop.
Yeah, I still stand by that, except maybe in deeper leagues, I would say he's probably worth a hold. He should still provide a little bit of value. It's just his impact is really questionable right now.
Right. Okay. Um, I still think, for me, and this is one that we probably won't agree on, I think he is worthy. Definitely, if you have an IR spot and um, it's not being taken by anyone, I think it's still worth having Marcus Smart on your roster. I just want to see how it gels and how it plays out once Jar's returned and how it all plays out with the rest of the team as well. I think Marcus Smart still has a role to play there. And finally, Asar Thompson. Now, this is quite surprising. I do have a question mark next to that, just because we've seen his flashes of brilliance. We've seen how good he can be, but that's when he's provided the opportunity. And Monty Williams is doing a disservice to this Pistons team, and it must be really disappointing for their fans. But not playing Asar Thompson is something just a little bit bewildering at this stage.
Yeah, and I'm a bit iffy on this as well. I even have him in one of my points leagues. But like you said, he really showcased his potential early on in the season. But with the returns from injuries for the Pistons, he just hasn't had that opportunity that he's used to seeing. For me, I am probably just going to wait and see what happens. But he's been stringing together a lot of unimpressive performances as of late.
Yeah, and I guess that aligns with the really low minutes at this stage. But I'm with you. I just want to give it a little bit longer because we
Mhm.
just know how good he can be. But as we know, that rotation of the Pistons can change at the drop of a hat, as we discussed with Killian Hayes. All right. This is a really long list, so we probably won't go through every single one, but long list of injuries. So last week, it's actually really nice to get a lot of guys back. But this week, as we discussed with some nice streaming opportunities, there's been a lot of notable injuries. But we'll start with some positive news. We mentioned Bradley Beal is probable for tomorrow's game, which is fantastic, but it's looking like KD may actually miss. So it's quite interesting that we just can't get the big three playing together at this stage, but it'll come together. And yeah, Bradley Beal, really nice for those that have been patient with him, and hopefully you haven't dropped him, because I still think he'll provide some really good value moving forward. All right, Mark Williams. Yeah, so back contusion, we said he's doubtful. So Nick Richards is the pickup there for at least one game, but let's keep an eye on Mark Williams' status moving forward. Bam Adebayo, we spoke about him. He's probably maybe 1 or 2 games away, but definitely missing tomorrow's game. So Orlando Robinson, as we discussed, is the pickup there. Lauri Markkanen is going to miss another game at least. But I still think it's more a day-to-day situation there. So he should return to the Cavs lineup very, very shortly. Look, I've got Cavs there. He doesn't play for the Cavs. Utah Jazz, I should say. Now, Evan Mobley, he's a Cavs player. So he's out again with knee soreness. There's no real pickup in that situation. We saw Dean Wade start for Evan Mobley, but he's definitely not worthy of a roster spot in standard leagues. But hopefully, Evan Mobley's absence is short-lived. Walker Kessler for the Jazz as well. He's out with foot soreness, so at least one game out for him. So Omar Yurtseven, a little bit more value there. We spoke about John Collins earlier as well. Mitchell Robinson, he's out for at least one game. I think he's getting some additional scans, but some ankle inflammation. So again, we spoke about Isaiah Hartenstein, so he's the pickup there. But day to day for Robinson, Jeremy Grant, I think he just misses one more game. He's in concussion protocol, but as I said, I think he returns by Thursday. So Matisse Thybulle, perhaps a one-game streamer only. Wendell Carter Jr., we've said he's been about a week for probably the last 3 weeks. So hopefully he does return this week. But yeah, we'll see what that does to Goga Badatse and Mo Wagner. But Wendell Carter Jr. should be returning very, very shortly. Markel Fultz, again, really disappointing. I had drafted him. I had him in keeper league, actually, but he just can't stay fit. He can't get back onto the court. And even when he does return from this knee tendonitis issue, which could be about a week or two away, I still think that they're going to look after him. They're not going to overplay him, which is bad for his fantasy value. What do you think about Markel Fultz?
I've never been really high on him, to be honest with you. A lot of the players on the Magic really make me nervous in terms of injury proneness, but I think right now the spotlight should be on Cole Anthony.
Yeah. I think we spoke about him last week, but yeah, definitely needs to be rostered at this stage. We spoke about Tyler Hero, so he'll be back very shortly. Kyrie Irving, hopefully just about a week out with his heel contusion. LaMelo Ball, 1 to 2 weeks is my prediction with his ankle concern. Same goes for Marcus Smart, your drop boy as well. Ben Simmons, back nerve impingement. I've got around 2 weeks there. I'm not sure if that's actually going to be the case. It's sort of hard to judge with Ben and his injury history as well. So hopefully it's around 2 weeks, but it could be longer. We just don't know at this stage. Jalen Duren, another ankle injury. I think it just seems like he's always going down with ankle issues at this stage. But another 2 to 3 weeks on the sidelines for him. Just really disappointing. He just can't stay fit. So much potential. Beautiful core team member for the Pistons, but they just can't seem to keep him on the court.
Yeah, it's been really disappointing as of late too, especially with all that potential that he flashed early on in the season.
Yeah, absolute rebounds monster. Looking like he could have been one of the best Pistons rebounders ahead of Andre Drummond, but it's hard to show that if you're not on the court. But yeah, hopefully he's back soon. Jalen Johnson, he's still out with his wrist fracture, so hopefully around 3 weeks for him. Zach LaVine we spoke about, so his timeline's actually been pushed out. So it was around 1 week, but now that's been pushed out to around 3 to 4 weeks. So again, more value for the likes of Patrick Williams and Kobe White, which is fantastic. And not an injury, but Ja Morant suspended, coming back on the 19th of December. So that's really exciting for those that either drafted him or kept him in the keeper league. So you've remained patient. So hopefully you reap the benefits of that once he does come back, particularly in points leagues.
Oh yeah, he'll definitely be exciting to see.
And he will make a difference to that team. They are struggling, the Memphis Grizzlies. Week 8 schedule. I'll let you take this one.
Let's get into it. So the noteworthy thing about this week is that every team will play at least 3 games. So usually we're used to seeing some teams play 2 games, but it's a pretty heavy week. And I won't say everyone who's playing 4 games, but there's only a handful of teams who are playing 3. And that's the Lakers, Grizzlies, Timberwolves, Thunder, Magic, and Raptors. And then there's a couple of back-to-backs of note here too, with the Lakers on Tuesday and Wednesday, Clippers on Monday and Tuesday, and the Suns on Tuesday and Wednesday as well. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so we've got pictured there AD and LeBron, of course. So they obviously won the in-season tournament. It wouldn't surprise me if one of them sat the back-to-back, but who knows? Maybe they just want to carry on that momentum into the rest of the regular season and play them on the back-to-back. But it's just noteworthy, the Tuesday, Wednesday, so watch out for any updates on that one. Same goes for the Clippers, Monday, Tuesday, back-to-back. Their stars have been playing all the back-to-back so far, which has been so good to watch. Particularly for Kyrie, who we just, in our mind, he's the master and the king of load management, but it just hasn't happened.
I know, it's a bit surprising.
Yeah, it has been
Not that I'm
surprising,
complaining.
but not complaining. I guess the Clippers just want to create that synergy and the chemistry, particularly with Harden coming in with the trade, just really build the chemistry moving into the playoffs. So this could be the last hurrah with, I guess, PG and with Kawhi. So they just want to keep them on the court, I guess. So hopefully these guys play the back-to-back Monday, Tuesday. And finally, the Suns, Tuesday, Wednesday. KD, questionable for Tuesday already, but looking like Bradley Beal will play Tuesday. I wonder if he does sit out that Wednesday, though.
I would say probably.
Yeah. And then Devin Booker just randomly starts missing games as well. So for
Hmm.
someone who's not that old, I guess they're just trying to look after their stars as well as they approach, well, not that we're approaching playoff season, but as they look towards playoff season. All right.
That's a
That's
wrap.
that's a wrap. Any final words, Kayla?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and we've already touched on this a little bit, is just keeping an eye on those injuries to the centers. There's a lot of backups right now who are going to provide great fantasy value, so just keep an eye on for that.
Yeah, really busy slate tomorrow. So yeah, there's so many options, particularly at the center spot as you mentioned, but it's hard to fit them all in. I wish I
Mhm.
could pick them all up, but I guess depending on the size of your leagues, it's hard to pick them all up. But yeah, great options, and sometimes it is difficult to pick between the best ones. But look out for all the updates. Keep following us on Twitter. Give us your Twitter handle, Kayla.
Yeah, Kayla_Fonte.
Fantastic. And obviously, you'll find me at NBA Fantasy Bible. Uh, thank you very much, Kayla. Thank you very much, guys. And we'll
Thank
see
you.
you same time next week.
Good luck.
See ya.